Well, let's get another view. We've heard many political voices over the last little while on the Phala Phala issue. There's a lot of politics to it. There is, inevitably, a lot of law to it as well. Modidima Mannya is a legal expert. He joins us now. Mr. Mannya, good afternoon to you. I'm sure you've read through the Phala Phala findings. I'm sure you've read through them more than once. Do you believe the findings that it makes are right and correct on the law?
Good afternoon to your viewers. No, they are not in many respects, and I will point out those aspects. You know, one of the issues relates to Section 34(1) of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, and the contravention, as it is stated, is that the President fails to report. But you know, the Prevention of Corrupt Activities Act relates to acts of corruption, not a case of theft and housebreaking. From what the report says, the facts relate to theft and housebreaking. I don't know how Section 34(1) can apply, and therefore how the President could have contravened it. I think that the report is flawed in that respect. That much is clear. The second issue is that the panel, of course, interrogated the question of whether the misconduct or the alleged violations are serious. But Rule 129, which defines, because this is the rule that was introduced, requires that whatever conduct you find must have been in bad faith, which means that there must have been some information or evidence that points out to bad faith on the part of the President. And if there isn't evidence of bad faith, you can't reach a conclusion of bad faith. And I don't necessarily see it explicitly in the report, and that's a matter of grave concern. The third issue is the question of hearsay evidence. And it's clear from the report that the panel relied heavily on hearsay evidence. I've noted that they seem to think they can admit it with caution. But, you know, the rules of evidence are clear, that hearsay evidence is inadmissible. And that relates to both the evidence of Mr. Fraser and the evidence of the President, to the extent that he relied on hearsay evidence. So you can't rely on it. And I think that then raises serious questions about the credibility of the findings that are made and dependent on hearsay evidence. The fourth issue is, you know, throughout the report, the panel repeatedly states this qualification that they didn't have all the information. And I think that the question is then, what would have happened if they had all the information? The logic is that it could have altered their findings and views. Now, in the absence of all the information, your own objectivity is constrained because you don't have all the facts before you to make a finding. And this is related to the fact that in some instances, and probably many instances, it appears that the panel relied on unverified information. Now, the question is, what happens if that information is verified or verification is conducted, and it turns out that the information that has been placed before them is incorrect? I mean, it means that the conclusions that they have made are incorrect. So, and I think generally there are material contradictions in the report. I mean, and not one, and there are so many sort of contradictions that I have picked up.
Mr. Mannya, I mean, you're the legal expert and I'm not, and you've given me a lot of food for thought on this issue. But there's one point of the report where this is all on the President's version, so on the evidence that he's given to them, this 132-page report. They ask these questions. The panel says the exact amount of money is yet to be disclosed. There are no records of the money entering the country. There's the mysterious Hazim who supposedly bought the buffalo and gave this money to the President's worker or general manager. Mr. Hazim has not collected the 20 buffaloes in 2.5 years. I mean, these are all serious questions for the President to answer. Don't they point to some kind of wrongdoing?
You know, I think, Stephen, we must distinguish between two things. When allegations are made, and we want to make a finding or a decision or a conclusion on the allegations, it must be supported by evidence. It is as much possible that things could have happened there, but I think the bottom line in this equation is that there must be evidence to support it. You know, one of the observations I make in the report is, at some point I thought, I'm confused. Who exactly is the panel investigating? Is it investigating Rode or Ndlovu or Hazim or whoever? For instance, the rule is clear that the conduct that the charge must relate to the conduct of the president acting in person. Now, you see, if Hazim comes into the country, unless you say the president facilitated his entry into the country, facilitated all these non-compliances that the panel spoke about, but the report simply talks about very questionable conduct on the part of Hazim. But does that questionable conduct mean that the president has done something wrong? And that is the test of what they were supposed to assist us with. So you are right, there are a number of questions. And the panel itself, by the way, says there are so many unanswered questions, and it says that you need to excavate. They even use the word excavate, which means that they say you must go deeper. And now, in the absence of answers to those questions, and I think that's the question, how do we reach these conclusions? And that probably strikes at the heart of the rationality of the findings and the conclusions that are made.
So, Mr. Mannya, if you were the attorney acting for the president, if you were his legal advisor right now, would you suggest he go to court?
Certainly. I mean, look, as I said to you, for instance, Section 34 doesn't apply. And here is my client sitting and being told that you have contravened something that doesn't apply. And I would have, firstly, I would tell the president to challenge this whole thing. You know, and please let me not be understood to be saying that things didn't happen, that needs to be probed. But I think the constraints, and I did indicate this in previous interviews, Stephen, that the panel is limited in the manner that the work is going to be done. And I think this report points to the risk. But I think the president has got actually not only the president, but any interested party can actually challenge this report.
Modidima Mannya, strong view, strong legal view. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate the time.